Good, good evening, everybody. I am Professor Deletta Gillespie. I am a tenure track here at Morgan State in the theater program. And I, as the track of my academic career goes, am charged with creating research, meaningful research that contributes to the community and contributes to the understanding of the world at large. And theater being my happy place, performance in general being my happy place, that's what I've chosen to do. So I have a research project that, well, several of them, but the one at the top of the list is one about the origins of African American comedy, more specifically African American humor. Can anybody tell me what the difference between humor and comedy is? Okay, well, when we think of comedy, we usually think stand-up comedians, we think punchlines, we think jokes. Versus when we're thinking about humor, we're thinking about finding the funny, finding the joy, the levity in any situation, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the punchline, although punchlines are usually involved. So that's how I like to think about the difference between the two, and a lot of people say the same. So I initially started looking at African origins of humor in the United States, and I did find some, but what I found really interesting, actually I found quite a bit, and I'm going to share a little bit of that research with you before I bring our panelists up. But what really interested me and took me off on a tangent was the idea of humor during enslavement. And it was like, well, how is that possible? Because these people really didn't have a whole lot to smile about. But as I continued to read and research, it became very clear that humor was actually a form of resistance. It was a form of survival. And it was also a form of joy when they made it joyful. They found reasons or moments to have something to smile about. And so the result of all of that research, or one of the results, is this conversation tonight, but the other is the play that will be running tomorrow. It's a workshop presentation, the first run. But I'm really excited about it, and it's called Cruise Control, Black Joy in Troubled Waters. And it basically takes 4 students to the west coast of Africa, to Brazil and to Trinidad and Tobago, where they talk about these how humor was able to save them. And there's a line from one of the characters that I found in my research, and it was that the master can't whip us as hard when he's laughing. And so that was very sobering to read that line, and there were others like that. They used humor as a way to get back at, or to sort of level the playing field in their minds. They would, obviously, you had coded language, which we all know how that works, and they would be talking about the master and roasting him, basically, and they would have no idea. There's a song, a Jongo song, which is a classification of freedom songs in Brazil. And in Brazil, they talked about when the forks will fly, and that was coded for when the master goes away. And something along the lines of the barnyard animals act up, which was coded for, yeah, now this is our time to escape. So those are just some of the things that I took directly from the research and put them into the mouths of some of these characters. And so it was just really, really powerful, and shed a few tears along the way. And it's been very, very cathartic in a way to learn that the folk that came before us used this very readily available tool to be able to get through their lives on a daily basis. So they had Jongo songs, they had other places, they had their terms or styles, types. I'm trying to say 4 words at one time, and they're fighting for which one's going to come out of my mouth next. In Trinidad, one of the places that we visit during the cruise ship visit, we talk about Calypso and the work of Lord Kitchener and Calypso Rose, and how they basically used humor to talk about their concerns during enslavement and beyond. And I think of one of the songs where he talks about rum and Coca-Cola, which I shared with my cast when we were preparing in rehearsal. And many people think of a certain age, think of the song Rum and Coca-Cola. You're thinking about was it the Andrews Sisters, I think it was, or the Lennon Sisters, one of those 1940s girl groups, and singing rum and Coca-Cola, working for the Yankee dollar, and they sanitized it, right? But what they were really talking about was the incidence of prostitution in the naval bases, U.S. naval bases in Trinidad, and how one of the his daughter, mother and daughter working for the Yankee dollar, meaning mother and daughter were prostituting themselves, you know, to make money, you know, go have a drink after the sailor boy, get a meal, you know, do your thing, and yeah, so talking about these kinds of social ills very disguised, and of course it was a really big hit in America, the United States, and nobody really, I don't know if they really knew or understood the nuances of that song. I don't think they did, considering it was a big hit for the group. So anyway, these are just some of the ways in which we find these incidences of humor that are used to roast, as the kids say these days, to get back at, and to survive, to find humor in their everyday lives. One of the remnants that we still see, or one of the things I wanted to do was sort of draw a correlation between what was, or our African origins, like where did all this come from? Well, we know that we have, those of African descent have an amazing ritual history of words, of oral history, right? Of sharing hundreds of years of history and culture in one person. I have several people that I like to call friends that absolutely, that's what they do. They walk around with their instruments, and they can recite 800 to 1500 years of Malian history at the drop of a dime. And I know one of our panelists can definitely speak to that. And so that's what they do. So we have an amazing history of oral traditions, and then we end up on our ancestors end up on a slave ship in the United States, and many times people will say, or history has said, oh, well, that was the end of it. You know, they had no more culture, and you know, we Christianized them, we baptized them, and we gave them the Bible, the slave Bible. And yeah, they were Americanized. Well, we know that that's not exactly true, that a lot of the culture was held on to. And one of the ways they did was, we see that represented today in the dozens, rap battles, things of that nature. And there are direct descendants. And so what I wanted to do is talk about the lineage of those particular forms. And then when I'm done, I'm going to invite our panelists up. I'm going to introduce them and have them come up, and we will continue the conversation. As I like to do in classroom, in my classes, are there any questions? Any comments? Okay. All right, so I'm going to take this off. And I always have notes, not that I need them, but they're like my, you know how Linus has his security blanket? Well, yeah, that's me. So I own it. All right, so we can have, I will go ahead and introduce them. With us tonight, we have Gina Nicole Brown, and we'll do a proper introduction of her in a moment. And Anna Malago, and she is our other panelist tonight. So we will get to them in a moment. Can I have the next slide, please? So I thought I would start with Nigeria. All right, so let's go on. So we have the Nigerian Yabis and African American Dozens. They are cousins. Next slide, please. So, in Nigeria, Yabis present, as you see, playful, sharp, verbal exchanges. They were used to entertain and also to foster a sense of social cohesion and bonding together. And the Dozens, of course, in African American culture, Well, we know what they do. Humorous, exaggerated insults, targeting the family, emphasizing, smarts and resilience in social settings. So the dozens, as they were transported, became a way of enabling or giving the enslaved tools with which to be able to withstand the insults that they would encounter during enslavement. So it was a way to toughen them up, so to speak, to sort of make them numb to those words. So that was one way. The other thing is I also learned that in Nigeria, in different parts of West Africa, it's done like, there are nuances. In one culture, it's okay to, you go after somebody's family. In some cultures, it's your mom, but not too much. And in other cultures, it's basically, they exaggerate the language. So instead of saying something like, did you see their car went down the street? It was like, it was such a day, it was such a beautiful day, and all of a sudden out of nowhere you see this big blue car just taking his time. Blah, blah, blah. So it's just sort of this, I like to think of it as reverse Shakespeare. No, I know very similar to Shakespeare actually. I think American English is reverse Shakespeare. But where you have 5 words per 1 word in American English, that's sort of like the equivalent. So this is what happens in some West African cultures when they are participating in what we call the dozens. And then of course, linguistic creativity, and again, you can see the direct lineage to rap battles and spoken word. Next slide, please. Okay, so I put a little chart up. So you see Nigerian, the language, etc., and the equivalent in the United States, African American Vernacular English, which is really interesting. A lot of people, just on a sidebar, when we hear somebody speak African American Vernacular English, the first thing that comes to people's mind is, oh, they don't know how to speak English, right? Or they don't know how to speak the King's English or proper English. Well, what they don't realize is that this has been passed down from ancestors who were not allowed to read or write. And they learned the English from former slaves by ear, and that is merged with West African linguistic formats. And so that's how you get AAVE. And linguists have, in recent years, gone on record as saying it's an incredibly clever use and adaptation of language, the condensation of the words. It's shorthand for English, standard English. So it's a wonderful thing. So next time you hear somebody talk AAVE, you don't reserve your judgment, okay? They're just practicing the tradition of survival. Format, in Nigeria, verbal dueling in public settings, verbal dueling in informal social settings. These are some of the things that are allowed. Appearance, you can talk about somebody's family, you can talk about their social status, and in the US and in the African American, culture, family, looks, intelligence. Entertainment is pretty much consistent across both categories. And you have to be clever over aggression. So this goes very, very near to what I was saying earlier about the whole reason for them engaging in the verbal battles was to toughen them up. So it was being clever over aggression, and it was not to harm each other. Okay. Again, rhythmic, audience interaction. Then we have spoken rhythmic cadence with audience cheering, etc. Reinforces creativity, and the diaspora evolved from African oral traditions, influenced African traditions. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. So as I always say, to really learn something, you have to practice it, right? So we're going to have a little fun. Next slide, please. So, humor and exaggeration to mock physical traits with metaphors and idiomatic expressions rooted in vernacular culture, i.e. the language of the people around you. Social norms and values, lighthearted but impactful. Next slide, please. So I think, yes, I have them here. So you have several kinds of these. I'm trying to find one here. Oh, Your head, they shine past lantern. Translation means your bald head shines brighter than a lantern, meaning you're teasing somebody for being bald. You chop bell like drum. Translation, and excuse the accent, I know it doesn't add to, or my lack thereof, but I think you get the gist of it. Translation, your stomach is as big as a drum, meaning it's a playful jab at somebody's size. Your shoe, they talk, meaning your shoe is talking, or that's a translation. And it means you're mocking somebody's worn out shoes with flapping soles. And you fine like accident, meaning you look as fine as an accident. Or it's a sarcastic compliment on appearance. So, there we have it, little translation exercise. All right, next one. So I think you get the gist at this point, and you can see the bridge between West and East and West. The diaspora cultural transmission is important. They were carried through the slave trade and adapted. They did not go anywhere. They did not disappear. And we know that even today, that art forms from Africa to the United States to the world. And all you have to do is look at K-pop, right? Learning to speak a little bit of English, but if you look at their dancing, their styles, it's like 1980s MTV, or what was the equivalent on what was it, Soul on BET? What was the Donnie Simpson? Do you guys remember some of the older folk in the room? Yeah, VH Soul, and there was another one on BET. Do you remember that show? Anyway, it's just like they just cut and pasted, right? Nigerian comedians and Afrobeats use Yavis elements to combine humor, social commentary, and satire, and that's another way in which Africans or enslaved used language to talk about their situations and to fool those in power. A lot of satire. I think of In Living Color. Remember the Dozens Battle with Keenan Ivory Wayans and that one, and the group and Damon, and they were talking about, what was it? What was the one line that what is it? Your mom was so black she went to night school and they marked her absent, stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. All right, next slide, please. Continue. I think we're about at the end. Okay. So again, using the same forms to address social issues. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're looking at some of the other cultures that also use these kinds of practices. So you have Uje songs, elaborate verbal dueling, mostly among rival clans. And they do it like it's a festival. It's part of that. It's like old Greek theater when they would have the tragedy and the comedies, and then you'd have the sadder plays and in between. So very similar in terms of structure, I guess, how you would outline, or they would be part of a festival. Halo practice, insult-laden verses performed with song and dance, critiquing social behaviors and community dynamics among the Iwe. Malumbano, verbal warfare. Swahili, did I get that right? Okay. It's East African featuring structured debates. Okay. And Shona, women use battle songs to challenge societal norms and to foster discussions about gender and justice. Next one. And it continues. Next slide. We should be about to end. Okay, great. All right, comments? As I ask my students all the time, what do you know now that you didn't know 20 minutes ago? Anybody want to share?
Maybe, hopefully you can hear me in the back. We were just having a discussion, and when you talk about the song and the dance and the movement together, it reminds me of a step show. Because the whole thing, you have the dance, you have the movement, but you also have the discs that are in there. So, of course, that whole tie-in is there, but yeah. So thank you for the parallel.
Yeah, absolutely. We think of, it's pretty commonplace in communities of color and Black communities specifically, but you know, the whole merging of the song and the dance and the song, the dance, the acting, if you will, through rituals and rites and that sort of thing. We in the West tend to separate those things, but we know in African communities they all went together. And there wasn't always such a thing as somebody standing on stage and you watching and then applauding. Everybody else is singing. If you look, it's circular. And you still see that replicated in Brazilian culture, in Trinidad, and all throughout the African diaspora. You see this circular presentation in performance, and everybody's singing. It's not just like the superstar we're watching the show. So, yeah, it all goes together. Yes?
Something that I just wanted to mention is I appreciate you creating the link between the African diaspora linguistics and African American linguistics. Because for me, I would always just think like, okay, we just start and stop here. Like I'm just used to African American culture, but not realizing it goes way back and it is connected to our ancestors. Yeah.
Thank you. So what happened was, I used to teach at Towson, and I taught cultural diversity in theater, and I taught Black theater. And more Africans were showing up in my class. And we may have the same dark skin, but our experiences are vastly different. And so I'm talking about things, and you know, we're having discussions in class, and they start getting heated because, you know, Africans are saying this, and African Americans are saying this, and I realized that I needed to build a bridge. I needed to build a bridge between what they knew and what they didn't know, and so I'm just sort of on a mission, you know, all the work that I do it to try to bridge that gap, because, you know, maybe they didn't endure enslavement, but they had colonialism, you know. They endured conquest, you know. The Conference of Berlin in 1868, when Europe decided they were going to go invade Africa, carve it up for themselves, we end up with these tribal battles that are still going on. A lot of the wars that we've had in the last 15, 20 years, we can trace to that. But those divisions were not, they were man-made, most of them. So thank you for recognizing that, and that's sort of my mission to create those boundaries of understanding, create bridges of understanding. Okay, well, if there are no further questions or comments, I'm going to invite our guests up. So coming up. Let's take your time. So I am beyond honored to have these two women on stage with me. I've known Anna, whichever one you want. I've known Anna for, what, about 3-4 years now? More than that? 5 years? Okay. I met Anna when I worked for the Parks and Recreation, PG Parks, where I was an arts specialist, and I was responsible for creating and curating festivals and concerts and all kinds of artistic events for the county. And one of the things I was bequeathed with was a Celebrate Africa festival. And so I was responsible for creating a festival of African talent. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I met some amazing people. And we have kept in touch, and so I'm going to read you a little bit about her. Internationally celebrated as the queen of spoken Afrobeat and lovingly called Mama Africa, Anna Bulago is a dynamic artist whose one-woman performance used comedy, spoken word, Afrobeat storytelling, African dance, and theater into transformative experiences. That is no understatement. Her viral work, like a Facebook clip with over 2.4 million views, resonates across generations, offering lyrical narratives of resilience, identity, and joy. Born in Nairobi, Kenya, Anna holds a BA in Economics and Sociology from Catholic University of Eastern Africa and an MFA in theater from Towson University, Go Tigers. She's a full-time professor and the Swahili Language, Literature, and Culture, Swahili Language and Culture lecturer at Howard University. We not mad. Her academic focus includes Swahili language, literature, and cultural studies. She's taught Swahili to diplomats, government officials, and business professionals in the DMV for over 15 years. And through her organization, Swahili Halisi International Language School, she also teaches Kiswahili to children and adults worldwide. Please welcome Anna Malaka. I just met this woman online a few weeks ago, but I feel like I've known her for a long time. She's, oh my God, I love the energy. Gina Nicole Brown brings together her decades of marketing experience with her passion for storytelling, public service, and community connection. She spent 30 years in nonprofit marketing leadership and reinvented her career in the arts and education. She captured national attention as a finalist in Sherry Shepherd's Sherry's Funny over 50 contests, and has appeared in the Netflix docuseries The Principles of Pleasure, national commercials for Orajel and Colonial Penn, and print campaigns like the NYC, New York City Emergency Management Ad Council Initiative. Gina is also the author of Teeth Should Not Be Optional, Random Thoughts from an Insomniac. And she regularly performs live in the Washington, D.C. art scene. In academia, she contributes as a clinical skills teaching associate and standardized patient at Johns Hopkins, Georgetown, George Washington University, and UMBC. She supports students in learning patient-centered techniques, empathy, and effective communication in clinical scenarios, helping to bridge the gap between textbook knowledge and real-world care. Her civic engagement, I'm not done yet, reflects her commitment to community. She serves on the Silver Spring Town Center, Inc. board, previously served as Vice Chair Commissioner on Montgomery County Commission on Children and Youth, and has worked as an election judge since 2016. That's scary. She earned a BA in Law and Society from American University and an MBA from the George Washington University. Please meet Gina Nicole Brown. Welcome, Gina. So I just want opening comments from you guys, and let's make sure that your mics are on. So opening comments, and it can be about what I've shared, and also one of the things that I really wanted to discuss and I shared with you guys is how we have and continue to use humor, comedy in everyday life. So, you got it.
Right, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I sometimes gonna butcher my friend's name. Sometimes I call her Deletta. I don't know. I hope I said it right today. But I have known her for some time now, and I'm so grateful to be here and talk about humor. It's something that we really need to value. And as I was driving, I was saying that every household has to have humor, and we need that. And because it's so important. I was talking about smiling, and when you start smiling, they say there's so many things, your endorphins rise and the stress almost decline. And then one thing I studied and I read about was that we are born inherently smiling, so that a baby in the womb smiles. So I was like, wow. So for me, a smile is the gateway to a laughter. You start smiling, the mouth opens, then you are smiling and you start laughing. And I was like, wow, God knows, or God knew, or the Creator knew what he or she was doing, because it's not something we have to learn to do. We are born with it. So the importance of us having humor in our life is another way, as she well put that, it is a form of not only survival, but thriving. So I'm going to start with that and say that please make a point of saying something humorous, being humorous, acting humorous, because definitely promotes your health, but importantly is that we are born with it.
Hi.
I'm not sure I'm going to be that eloquent. I wasn't thinking of that at all in the car. I was like, if you don't get out of my way, so, which is generally what I'm thinking about in the car. Yeah, I think most of us have some version of a funny bone in our body. So I never actually thought of myself as a comedian. Others told me I was. So I think that, you know, it's, if somebody tells you you're that, then that's what you are. But then I started to sort of believe it, which I think it's sort of just another metaphor for eventually, I think you should sort of find your own way and see yourself as that. Yeah, I think humor for me, it's sort of a solve for anything that happens in my life. Generally, whether it's good or bad, it's a way, it's a perspective. So I think it's a way for me to digest anything that happens to me, at me, around me, and it just happens. I don't try to find the humor in it. It just happens kind of naturally for me. I don't actually know, often I say, I don't know how other people sort of live in this world without it. I feel like, how are you raw dogging this life? I have to find a way to just like, oh my gosh, it's so ridiculous. So for me, it's what I call sort of a salve, like kind of like a lotion that you put on, and it glides all over me. So.
Oh, and please know the floor is open, so anytime you want, please feel free to either yell it or better yet, come down, grab the microphone and have a chat. I want to talk about, in the play that I wrote, yes, I'm plugging the play, yes. There's a line about how Jimmy Kimmel, if he had put his lyrics in a song, the things that he said, you know, that got him fired for a week, or released, or hiatus, whether or not he would have gotten away with it. And that brings me to the conversation about the role of humor in times like today. And how much do you put out there, or share, or yeah, because you write, and you both write and produce work. So how do you navigate, how do you tread difficult topics, or maybe controversial topics in a time like we are living in now?
I think I'll say this. I think humor is the best way of, or comedy is the best way of relaying very tough, controversial topics. Because you can do it when people are not so. Let me give an example of going with stand-up comedy, right? And you are a stand-up comedy, you're already prepared that you're going to laugh. So when you are at ease, you're not tensed, it's not like an office meeting. And so it's so easy when those difficult words or difficult or controversial issues come out, but in such a way that the person has knitted it so well in comedy that by the end of you laughing, you're like, oh wow, he actually was talking about rape. But before that, you didn't get it that way. Oh wow, he was actually talking about the poor. So I think comedy, what comedy does is help us digest very difficult conversations so that we can now leave the room and have an open discussion. Where we could not discuss, we can be able to talk about that. So that's why I say it relays for me, comedy or humor is just passing that message that sometimes you cannot tell somebody else face to face, but it lands softer or easily through humor. And I say this because even right now, myself as immigrant or as a person who has lived in this country for a long time, I always say, yeah, and I'm a citizen also. But you figure that when you're talking, I do talk at different places, perform, and I'm doing a comedy, and right now I can tell people in the different communities are very, especially immigrant communities, are very tensed about the situation. I had a poem that went viral like 3 years ago, it was talking about the pride of being an immigrant. And now, if you go performing somewhere, people are like cringing, like, ooh, don't say that, you know, because of that kind of fear. But at the same time, when I use the comedy and I say, or I use humor and I speak about our situation, you figure that people are not as tensed and they're easily able to understand it and be like, thank you for speaking about that. I was not able to do it, but you did relay the message that people need to know that, hey, listen, we don't live on trees. We have homes in Africa, you understand? Or, you know, we know more than just, you know, whatever you think that, you know, we don't have money. You know, any aspect that immigrants have some negative stereotype, but when you can bring it out and then be able to have people accept it and not only just relaying it, but also bring others who are not from your community understand others' plight so that they can be both sympathetic and empathetic. I think that's what humor does. It makes us all feel empathetic, sympathetic, and at the same time understand one another despite of our, you know, where we come from.
I want to say before Gina responds, that Anna has a one-woman show called I Didn't Know I Was Black Until I Came to America. It's funny. It is hilarious. So, is it still up on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay. Part of it's up on YouTube if you want to check it out.
Yeah, I think just to talk about your question about Jimmy Kimmel, how he said it. When he first said what he said, I, of course, was just like, yeah, if anybody else that looked like us said it, they wouldn't have, the screen would have gone black. It wouldn't have been like a call or something the next day. So when you ask if we feel like we can just say sort of what we want, we can in a club. We can, you know, you can do stand up in a club. They know what, like if you're doing, but they know your style typically if somebody's coming to see you, but we don't have the privilege that other people have when we have a platform such as the one that Jimmy Kimmel had, because we still have to eat and feed our family, and because we don't have the luxury to some degree of having generational wealth passed down from family to family in the way that other people do. We can't take that hit. So it's different for most of us. We want to say many things. There's been so much I've wanted to say over the last several months. I think I learned part of it is because, yes, I've been involved in some of these elections over the last few years of elections that I can't really say what I want to say as a comic and or just as a human. It's not even funny. It's just as a human I can't say it because I would lose some of the contracts that I probably have with, you know, organizations. So what I have done is I've just taken this time to get to know the people that I didn't realize I was connected to online, because if you just watch, they will share who they are every day.
Yep.
And that's what I've done for the last several years, because I can't speak out. I can see who they are, and I can choose not to break bread with you ever again. So that's kind of what I've done, and then quietly made fun of them.
Yes, back to that roasting and shading, right? Shade, yes. Responses to what they just said?
I have a question. Especially in your presentation on top of the parallels between, you know, America and Africa and stuff like that. But when in our own bubble, black folks, that's very general when I say black folks, humor, is it helping us? Is it good for us? And the reason I'm going to throw at you, I think I may be the oldest one in the room, close to it. But back in the 60s, and I'm going to show you the context of this. Back in the 60s, it was a big thing. I grew up in New London, Connecticut. And Dr. Jane Torrey had written a thesis about Black English. And when she wrote that thesis, she was a white woman at Connecticut College up there. They lost their minds up there because there's no such thing as Black English. My mother was a teacher, she was a thing like that. And we're not saying that because that was a white woman talking about dialect and stuff like that. What I want to throw out here, I want to hear what are your feelings about Tyler Perry, because he's humorous. So I would like to see, what do you feel about that? I have opinions about that, but I'd like to hear what you have to say, and I may come back with what I have to say. But Tyler Perry.
I'll start the conversation. So I actually had a class where we put Tyler Perry on trial. I had the students read some of his work, watch a little bit of the video, and their assignment was to argue for the efficacy of his work or against the efficacy of his work and the damage to the culture. And it was very intense, and people are very much, he's a very polarizing figure in our community. Over time, I've mellowed a little bit. I understand, there's an article about theater should thank Tyler Perry. No, seriously, I can't remember who wrote it. But she talks about, the author of the article talks about the fact that Tyler Perry gave permission to a very conservative, religious group of folk within the Black community and gave them permission to go to the theater, many of them go for the first time, because they feel like, it's the gospel play. And so it's, they don't go to a regular theater and, get corrupted or be in those, those plays that have those topics that they don't want to know anything about. Tyler Perry is safe for them. The other thing is that he serves, especially earlier in his career, and still does, he serves a demographic that would never feel comfortable going to a traditional theater house. They feel like theater is not for them or performance is not for them. So he's opened that door and given people license or permission to want to go to theater, albeit still that. Does he pander to the lowest common denominator, some people would say, and some people, you could make a statement for that. I don't know if it veers into judgment. You could be, take it either way. But on the flip side, is there a lot of intellectual stimulation? No. It's very slapstickish. People will call this style of humor. It's very kind of raw. The words are escaping me right now. But, compared to Spike Lee was like, no, man, why are you doing that to the culture? They had a beef for a long time. So I think that there is a role for his work. My significant other, he can watch Meet the Browns all day long, and he's cackling all day long, and I'm in the room for 30 seconds, it's like, no, I'm leaving. So I think it just depends on, that's my take on it. Did you guys hear the comment?
Yeah. You good? I'm good. I'll go. Okay. Yeah, I think that, I think I have also mellowed over time, from both the perspective of a comic and also as an actor. So from a business perspective, Tyler has allowed many people to work in the industry that might not have gotten an opportunity in LA or New York in the other studios. So, and they have done work with Tyler and gone on to do other work. So from that perspective, he's opened doors for so many people, and George is probably not the same since he's opened up a lot of space down there for people. So I think for people also who couldn't get to LA either because of economics or it just didn't work out, they had to stay close to home to take care of family or whatever it is, Atlanta has turned into a place where there's opportunity. So that's my business head. As somebody who participates as an actor on screen, I think it's up to us to choose the roles that we want to take. I also am very careful not to write off somebody completely, because I might not like some pieces of their body of work, but I might like some parts of their body of work. So I try to give grace there, and there are some roles as a woman that he's written for other women that would be particularly challenging for me to play. But I will be honest, I've actually played in a short film somebody who was abused, and the story needed to be told because that was the story. So I think we write from the experience that we have, and sometimes does it appear to be pandering? Maybe, but it also could be the experience. We are a product of our environment and the people around us, so I try to give grace. I think that's how I feel about him, and I just think I can make a choice whether it's something that I want to do or something that I don't want to do.
I think for me, given that we are here today talking about humor, and I was one of those people, maybe I was like, oh, I'm tired of Madea. But right now, as we just speaking and having this discussion, is that, no, Tyler Perry is needed in our community. Why am I saying that? Is because she gave Madea a platform, and we all have a Madea in our households, especially people of color. We have an aunt that resembles Madea. We have an uncle that resembles Madea. Not the facial, but their character, how they make us laugh, how they just make the room vibrant. And so Tyler Perry gave Madea a platform so that we all can respect that aunt, that uncle, that we sometimes have to call, be like, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time, when you gonna come? Because we miss her, and when she comes home, the whole house is funny, everybody is laughing, everyone is having a good time. So I really believe that what people say, or my spiritual aspect says, there is enough for everyone. If that's not your cup of tea, just like she said, it is a cup of tea for somebody else to enjoy Madea because she resonates with that character and gives that character respect, because then now you respect the mama or your auntie or uncle or cousin who really makes you all have fun in the house, in the what you call family reunions, in the cookouts. And that's what Madea does to us. She shows that it is okay to laugh at our own sorrows. It is okay to laugh at our own misfortunes. And it's the laughter that gives us more life. And so I really think she is needed, Tyler Perry is needed, and Madea is needed. Now, for some people who get tired of it, like in Swahili, there's a word we call kukinai, meaning you've watched it so many times, and now I don't want to see any more Madea, I don't want to see any more Tyler Perry and stuff like that. It is okay too, but remember, there is enough for everyone. And so if this is not your cup of tea anymore, it is somebody else's cup of tea. Just like she said, her significant other watches Meet the Brown. It's been on rotation for a long time, but understand what I mean? So we always have to know that there is room for everyone to enjoy and to celebrate who they are without criticizing the other. So for me, at this point, I really wanted to say that I am even glad that Tyler Perry went ahead and introduced us to Madea, because I also personally, when I saw Madea, I was like, yeah, I have an aunt just like Madea, and I respect her for that even more, because I know she brings the funny in the home.
Thank you. I will add a footnote to that. His female characters are problematic. And I will also say that he writes all of his own stuff, and it would be nice if he had a serious collaborator every now and then to shake things up a little bit. On the flip side, he just donated $1.7 million to make sure that 5 or 6 organizations around the country are able to feed their people while, bridge the gap in the SNAP benefits thing. So,
And the reason I brought it up, there's a classism thing that happens even within our bubble again.
yes.
Like I said, Tyler Perry used to come here to do his shows, and Tyler Perry shows not necessarily the type of show I would go to, but since it was in my house, I sat in the balcony to see what he was doing. And when I watched it, I realized that, I grew up in the 60s. Milton Berle. Milton Berle put a dress on every week.
Flip Wilson.
Flip
I was
Wilson.
gonna say, yeah.
But I went to Milton Berle because Milton Berle's a white boy. You know, Carol Burnett, that whole company, they broke character every week. So I'm just saying that, and we look at that, it's, oh, they're great, these great comedians, something like that, but Tyler Perry, he gets, like I said, he's not, like you said, it's to taste, you know, either you go or you don't go, but I just think that we have a problem, not a problem, we have this thing that we do, you know, over there, Tyler Perry, like you talking about the money, there was on, I got hacked on Facebook, so I can't get on it anymore. It's been almost 2 weeks, two years now. But there was a debate because someone who was in Actors Equity was coming for Tyler Perry because, you know, he's not hiring us, you know, going for him. But Tyler Perry was hiring everybody in Atlanta. He was giving them all jobs. You know, so I'm just saying that we look, you know, the way we look at things, this myopic thing, we have to be careful, especially in humor. You talk about humor, you know, we talk about ourselves.
Yes.
You know, I, growing up, was it Living Color on TV? I hated that show because it wasn't my type of comedy. You know, and I'll tell you, the episode that got me was Washington, the mayor, what's his name?
Harold.
Yeah. You know, and they did a skit about him, and I said it was unfortunate what he did, but what they did on TV, I said, well, I don't think this is something that should be on TV. You know what I'm saying? But that Living Color was top-rated show. So I'm just saying that, you know, like I said, humor is like who it is. Who are we roasting? And what are we saying? Bill Cosby got his major problem, but he was a humorist. Great humorist until he stepped over a line. But I'm just saying everybody had the different types of humor.
I think I want to just add to that, if that's okay, that, yeah, I think you have to meet people where they are, and I think some of the things that come up in a show, much like in Living Color, SNL, I realize, is not black, but they bring up topics that, honestly, a lot of people, they wouldn't even know that this had happened, right? So what it makes you do is like, what are they talking about? Oh, what did that DC mayor do? And then they go research it on their own and find out the real story. So if nothing else, it could serve in a backwards way. Some people who've educated their news through humor. That's the only way they get it. Whether it's Colbert or The Daily Show or whatever you're watching, you know, sometimes you just get it through humor, and maybe it's not the exact information, but it prompts you to go find out what really happened. Hopefully it prompts you to do that. But I hear you, but I think it's common practice for comics to take a current event and just tear it up every which way. And admittedly, Mayor Marion Barry put himself in those shoes. So, I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I really want to sort of, again, footnote what you just said. I think about Josh Johnson, if you guys are familiar with Josh, who is like amazing, I like to call him a humorist. He's a comedian, but he's done amazing work storytelling, how he weaves all these elements in. His punchline may take half an hour, but it doesn't feel like it because you're in for the ride, you're in for the story. I sometimes read the comments and people say that they get their news now from humorists, from comedians, because they don't trust the news outlets. So again, especially traditional media. So we're in that we're doing that dance now, you know. And the other thing is you see in his comments, stay safe, you need a bodyguard, be careful. So oxymoron, yes.
You know, I often think that Tyler Perry is the modern version of the Jeffersons or Good Times, and giving a glimpse for white America into black culture. And sometimes maybe we are maybe ashamed of how we act sometimes, but Tyler Perry just puts it out there. And all of white America, they eat up Tyler Perry because they think they're getting a sense of black culture on the down low. and he evolved to the big screen, and I'm happy for him. But these are our stories, and we shouldn't be ashamed of them. And we, we're at university, we have a few degrees now, we a little more learned, and we read a little more greater works of art, but this is, is it slapstick? Well, it's just about humor. And at the end of the day, we're entertainers. Don't be ashamed of our product. Our product is to make people laugh. Don't get that deep into it. And when you get deep into it, and the beauty about Tyler Perry is occasionally he'll unravel some real deep issues in our culture. And that's that moment in the show where you start to reflect, and that's what theater's about. Reflecting on the issue and saying, that could be me, So I appreciate Tyler Perry. My wife doesn't miss Tyler Perry episode of anything. And and it wears thin for us, many of us. We can see a little Tyler Perry goes a long ways. but if you haven't seen him in a while, it's good.
He has a show now on called Assisted Living. I actually watched that a couple of weeks ago. I found myself trying to get ready to leave the house, and I found myself sitting inside the bed, and I realized in 10 minutes, oh, you're watching Tyler Perry. Oh, but it was good. It was about, and I guess because I saw myself in that, but being celebrating a milestone birthday a few months ago, and it was talking about what happens. Do you stop wearing high heels? When you get a certain age, do you fold up and go hit the rocking chair? Do you just keep living full out? And I was like, okay, all right, I see you, Tyler. Good work. Yes, to your point.
First, I'm enjoying the discussion. So I feel like, thank you for the perspective on Tyler Perry, because I never thought about the jobs that he creates for our community. I guess because I couldn't separate who I am and what I find funny, and so I'm always like, why is he always painting us, in these conditions where, we're fighting for our lives and, we're broke and it's like, woe is me. I'm like, because I see so much great excellence, from my family and my peers and my community. And I'm like, we're not all grouped into this category. But I like the fact that my introduction to Medea was my time. And then now, as you all say, it's somebody else's time. And my question though is, like, when he does some of his movies, like there's one with Taraji P. Henson where she was like going through, I guess, a divorce of some sort. Like, how do you find the funny in that? Like, people's lives are being destroyed and like there's so much chaos and stress and destruction, and it's like, to me that's difficult. And I go through things in my personal life, like mainly with my health, and it's like, how do you find that humor? How do you find that comedy? And then one more note. Although I was born in 1990, so I'm still a baby, but I also don't care for the Boondocks and things like that. That's not my cup of tea. It's just, I don't know, I can't relate. And we recently had a production here on last weekend, and there was like so much cursing. And although I enjoyed the show, a part of me was like, oh, like I'm still kind of cringy inside. I'm like, dang, like what does that say about me as an actor or as a performing artist? Like, does that make me bad for not relating?
So, is that the? I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's basically it.
So again, as we just said, it's not to everybody's taste, right? And it doesn't make you a bad person. You like what you like. Okay? The danger is to classify it as better than or above than. Going as Mr. Cook was was hinting at, or actually came right out and said, this class thing. You want to make sure not to ostracize or categorize it as less than. It's just different. And there are people, one thing that comedians, humorists, playwrights do is take real life and put it on the stage. And there are people that talk like that, real life. There are people that move through the world like that. There are people that have these situations. It's life on stage. That's the job, to bring life to stage and to give people the opportunity, as we opened earlier, to reflect on these things. So it's okay. It doesn't have to be for you. And there's no judgment on you. We like what we like. I like sumo wrestling. Jan knows I'm serious. I know the names, Waka Kakatage. I know he has 2 brothers in sumo, and people look at me like, but I love it. Just the culture, the history of it, the practices, the traditions. It's just amazing to me. So you like what you like, there's nothing wrong with that. Just, the fine line of taking it beyond that.
If I just want to say something about that, I think Tyler Perry's intention when he does his film is not only to just humor us with some very serious aspect of what's going on. There usually is a note that he's trying to portray, or a positionality, or an issue that will come, whether it's going to be physical or verbal or mental abuse. That comes out too, and it comes out on a serious section of that movie. However, also, he brings the humor, and I realize why we, just like she put it so well, is that even our enslaved ancestors used humor in that difficult situation, and we use humor in political situations that are very sad, and but we do that, and I believe one reason is to get us over the hump of the seriousness aspect, so that we can break free of the stress and understand that it is okay and this too shall pass. Because if we stay on the aspect of, oh, this is hurtful, this is sad, we were not going to move on, and we need to move on. So when the humor comes in, is to break that ice and let you know, listen, this too shall pass. It is okay to laugh at your situation. It's part of life. It's gonna go through, you're gonna come out through the other side. And that's what humor does for us. So like, for example, if I take about the issues of Kenya, when Kenya is dealing with the political unrest because of what's going on, and the Gen Zs are always taking anything the president says. They come back on social media and they turn it, and they just make fun of it all. Though they are hurting is because there's the level of unemployment is high. So it's high. There's a lot of things. Poverty level is high. But they want to use their humor and that aspect of that speech to let you know that, look, we are going through this, but this too shall pass. Or at the same time that, don't take it, like people say, don't take yourself too seriously. And there's a point in that, because guess what? You take yourself too seriously, you're not going to enjoy the, life that's passing through, the cat that just walked through, or somebody, who, just passed and made you laugh or something by doing something silly. Or even David Chappelle, when he was using a lot of those skits. Yes, you see, you're laughing because you enjoy them, but there was a lot of seriousness in that, and sometimes you get offended. Why is he making fun of a person who's, has mental health issues? But there is a point through it. And so we have to look at the funny, not as a way as it's insulting, but it's just helping us go through the sad situations.
Yeah, I was wanting to comment on the things that are happening right now and in our country. And I remember almost a year ago to the date when, the person that occupied 1600, I don't ever say his name. I never say his name, I say dude down the street, 1600. But he, when that happened, I was in a funk for about 3 days. And I remembered a story that my grandmother told me many years ago. And actually, an event that we went through together. And it was watching Nixon, when Nixon won, and I was a little girl. And, it was we made it an event, me and my grandmother. It was a time I loved my grandmother. We got to hang out together. It was amazing. And at the end of the night, I remember her walking away from the television. She turned it off. She told me she left me there to watch TV, which she never did before. But she says, well, just remember that Nixon may be in the White House, but God is always on the throne. And that has stuck with me. And the other thing is, one of my dear friends in Bermuda used to always tell me, baby, don't ever let anybody steal your joy. And so we still have to get up in the morning. We still have to go to work. We're very fortunate that we have a job to go to, because there's so many of us that don't, right? And if during this time of resistance, during this time of whatever it comes out to be, the one thing we have is control over how we are going to respond. And if we lose our joy, they win. If we lose our joy, we have no reason to get up in the morning. So that's one of the reasons why I personally think that laughter, humor, and comedy, and that's the thing I do every night before I go to bed, 30 minutes. I don't even watch regular TV anymore. I'm on YouTube. What can I watch tonight? Was that the comedian, the little person? Yeah, Josh, and there's a little person. I can't remember his name. Oh my God, he's so crazy funny. Anyway, that's kind of like my bedtime thing.
Yeah, I wanted to say, just in terms of the time, things that are happening now, as a people, we just find a way. I am an old person on TikTok, and when the hurricane hit Jamaica, I just, if you have a TikTok account, I'm just asking you when you leave here tonight, not now because I'm speaking, but when you leave here, please go hashtag, I know, yeah, I've met Como. Yeah, please, if you have TikTok, and maybe it moved over to Instagram too, I don't know, so you can just do a search for it. When the Jamaicans had the hurricane, oh my gosh, the funny that they came up with, and to your point of how can a person make fun of whatever? I've made fun of my own divorces, and other things in my life. So yeah, so I also think as a comic, and I've always said this when I was performing, if it's your story, you can laugh. You own that laughter because you owned the pain, so now you own this laughter. And now you can bring people along. You can't make fun of my divorce, but I can. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So yeah, when you're watching the screen, feel what you feel, but then understand there's a reason kind of behind it, and you don't have to laugh when everybody else does, but that's sometimes what it is. But please go look at the Jamaicans and the hurricanes. It's hilarious. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, I've been through a Cat 5 hurricane in Bermuda, and we had hurricane parties. We did. They're sitting in the house and watching the wind blow. They have hurricane construction codes, and probably the best in the world. We were sitting on the couch and watching, like the windows have to be able to withstand 250 pounds of sustained air pressure. So we're sitting on the couch and watching telling jokes. We had no electricity, and at that point, no electricity, no water pump. So we're just watching, making jokes about the windows, you know. And yeah, that's how we got through.
Question? Yes. Okay. So I was curious as to what your thoughts are on comedians that tend to struggle with like a darker side, where like I think about Robin Williams and his story, and it broke my heart because he was somebody who was just genius, like his ability to find the humor in things, yet there was so much pain within him. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on those types of comedians that are suffering in silence? How do we maintain a heart of empathy and still be able to find the comedy while also balancing that potential pain that we even may have ourselves?
So I got to see Robin Williams in 1980, and and it was one of the funniest shows I've ever been to. And I literally walked out of there with my stomach hurting because I laughed so much and so hard, and also I might have been a little lightheaded because you don't want to laugh because you're afraid you were going to miss the next thing he said. So it was one of those kinds of things, one of the best shows I ever went to. But let me say this, I think that to do this, period, whether it's acting and telling jokes and laying your stuff out there, being on stage, is an act of bravery, and it's an act of extreme vulnerability. So I think that anytime you open that door, it's easy to be taken down the path. And so I think it's about knowing where your boundaries are, knowing what things can take you to the point, getting help. No shame in that. And I think that, and being in community with other people really helps. I think those are things that, and another brief story, I was part of a playwrights festival where we were dealing with the disappearances. The topic of the play was the disappearance of women in Juarez, Mexico. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it's been happening for about 25 years, where women go to work in the American factories, Panasonic and Mattel, and they go to work and they don't come home. And they find their remains in the desert somewhere. And it's been happening right across our borders, and nothing has been done about it. So going to that very dark place every day to step into the shoes of these characters was I mean, people were literally walking out of the rehearsal hall sobbing. And so they created a ritual for us to be able to go back and to recover ourselves before we came back. You know, we could go home. So there's things that you can do. We'd go have coffee or tea or whatever and decompress. So that's all I'll say to that. Yeah.
When she brought up Robin Williams, the word crossed in my head was escapism. Is humor really?
I project. It's humor escapism. I mean, you know, like you talk about comics, if you're telling your own story, that's a form of escapism, cathartic, it's a cathartic process. But, you know, I think about Carlin, he's dead now. You know, the thing is, you know, he was a political, thinking satirism, but it was always humor. So it's kind of escapism, whatever. You know, please deal with that word, please.
If I can just talk about what she said and just join it together with that. I think, number one, yes, humor is cathartic, or as they say, it's a healing mechanism. And I don't want to call it escapism, but it can be both, you know. It can be a way of escaping what you really don't want to deal with and face, but at the same time, it can be a way of you trying to heal what you have been through, whatever trauma that is. And the best way to do it is bringing on stage, because like I know of, I forget her name, but she was in that, I can't remember, but she has talked about a lot of traumatic things that she's gone through, but she also comes on stage and speaks about that and acts it out and goes through the whole process. And so I believe that's important for many of us comedians who've been through that, to use the stage as our place for healing. And however, what happens is that, and that's what I wanted to talk about, is that when you as an audience are looking at Robin Williams, you are not looking at him and thinking, oh, man, he's going through all that. You know, you are looking at him as he's funny, he's entertaining. And so it's up to, it's up to you to understand that, okay, fine, this is a comedian and he's making me laugh, but at the same time, if you have his background story and you want to think about why he's going through that, then I think you have to now divide your attention to two things: a mental health condition and a comedian. Those are two separate things there. So therefore, he may have, if you knew his background, he may have had depression, and that doesn't make him not become a performer. He can still do, just like all of us. We have many other issues that we deal with, but we're still working. So that's his job. He's just doing his job. He's a comedian, he's an entertainer. However, he does have his own challenges that he has to go through that. And so we cannot say that, oh, why is he doing this and he has this problem? Because you go to work and you still have other problems. So you have to look at it that way. And in terms of us looking at comedy or humor as escapism, I feel like sometimes it's not escapism, as I said earlier, it's healing. When you face your demon on stage and you talk about it, really the next day you can see the person who harmed you and it will feel nothing because you already had the first story. You said it, just like she said, you can talk about my divorce, I can talk about it. So that way I think it helps us as comedians or actors when we deal with our issue without other people dealing with it, and we are open to saying it so that from now on I don't feel any shame even if I meet the person who harmed me because I already hold that story and I told it.
I think just to talk about the word escapism, for me, when I was doing a lot of stand-up, I would say it was when I was my most authentic. When I'm performing on stage, that's me. I used to do a bit about going to work, and other people tend to want to always put costumes on Halloween, and I had no interest in that. So they were always like, why don't you ever want to put on a costume on Halloween? This is what we're doing here at the office. Because I put on a costume every day when I come in. When I put on whatever I put that on for you, not for me. When I speak, sometimes I speak for you, not for me, because there are other things I want to say, but I'm holding back because I don't want to become angry or aggressive or too assertive. So because I looked at the corporate world as wearing a costume every daggone day, I would be damned on Halloween. I wanted to be myself. And so when I got on stage and I performed, I wasn't escaping me. I was telling my stories. And some of them were funny. I also did poetry, and some of them weren't. One of the other reasons why we sometimes do what we do, and it seems like really hard topics to talk about, I'm adopted, and I did it in a poem, spoken word poem I performed at one of the busboys in the DC area. And a young woman afterwards, and the lights were so bright, I didn't even see her in the audience. Asian woman came up to me, really quite young, like maybe 22, 23, she was crying. And she said, when you were done with your poem, I felt seen. I felt like you saw me because the people who adopted me were white. And you see me, and they never understood who I was. It was always this or that. And it was a different version of feeling out of body. But very often for creatives, particularly when we pour ourselves on stage in whatever form of art we do, we are ourselves. She does a one woman, it's her. She's not escaping any version, she's her. And it's, for me, it was always me, right? So when I escape, it's when I'm acting. When I'm in film or when I'm doing that's an escapism. That's me embodying a character and becoming that person that is not me, but trying to deign to tell that story.
I brought up escapism back to Tyler Perry. His audiences, you know, we go to see humor because, like you said, every day I have to put on this facade, this face that I'm public. And when they came here to watch Tyler Perry, they let go of all of that. It's gone because, like some people didn't see themselves on there. But the thing is, I don't have to worry about my job today. I don't have to worry about that person that cut me off, you know, you said stuff like that. Because when they got here, because he filled the house. He would be the whole week. Every single seat was always filled in our concert hall. But they were coming here because they could release. Now I'm talking about their escape, not necessarily the artists, but I'm just saying the audience.
Yeah, like when we go see a movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
That escape was a bit, you know, so humor could be part, you know, used for, you know, cathartic in that way.
And it always has been. It's one of the things that my research has led me to see. It's always been for us a catharsis, a release, escapism, you know, momentary, just dropping all the burdens, right? As well as resistance and all the other things.
Ms. Gillespie, do you mind, last semester we did Williams and Walker. talking about Bert Williams in blackface, which is humor. Can you talk about
Yes.
that and humor?
Okay, I don't know exactly where you,
Well, I'm just saying, the thing
yeah.
is,
So yes, Bert Williams was one of the funniest, you know him, right? One of the funniest human beings on the planet. An African American who was originally from the Bahamas, I believe it was, and he came to the United States, ended up in California, and ended up hooking up with Walker. I can't remember his first name. George Walker, thank you. And they created this comedy team, and they were the forerunners for, they laid the foundation for vaudeville, for what's the word I'm looking for? Variety entertainment, and they performed in blackface, and it was very problematic for him because he was not being himself. He was playing a caricature of himself, a caricature of a race, and he felt that burden. And so it was one of the only forms, and people ask now, looking back in hindsight, we ask, well, why did he do that? Well, one, primarily it was the only game in town. If you wanted to be on stage, you had to put the paint on. You had to go through the behaviors. You had to, even when you weren't in costume. When I teach black drama, one of the things we talk about is the fact that when they were in blackface in tourist parts of the country, they had decoy cars because people would shoot at them as they were leaving town, or if they were out in public, maybe just going to get a bite to eat. If they weren't shucking and jiving, even though they weren't on stage, but if they weren't doing it, they would say, oh, they don't know their place, we have to take care of them. So to have this burden, and at the same time, he's one of the funniest individuals. W.C. Fields, a late comedian, said he was one of the, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, he was one of the most brilliant entertainers he'd ever met, and one of the most saddest human beings he ever met. So to have that dichotomy in one body and to live with that. But his comic timing was brilliant. That was before spoken, even before talkies or sound came to movies. He was just brilliant. Physical comedy and facial expressions and how they were always, So is that kind of
it's about the blackface because he had to do blackface in front of white folks. But the thing, he took that humor, that caricature, and turned it into a person.
Absolutely.
Made him into human, but that humor was still there.
Yes.
So we had a conversation in my class today, particularly about Bert Williams. So we're talking about the minstrel show, which I'm going to hop kind of all over the place, but I'm coming right back. But the structure, we talked about the structure of Tyler Perry. So it was the same structure really as a minstrel show. So you had the stereotypes, you had all of these, but it was a formula that works because the same structure is the structure for a sitcom, for a Broadway show. All of that minus, the racial aspect is there. But I was talking about our production of Williams and Walker, and the young man who played Bert Williams, it was his senior capstone. And I walked in on a moment and I wasn't sure what I had seen. So we discussed, and Jordan had been in my class too, so he knew about the makeup and Burt Cork and what people had to do. But it was a moment when I walked in and he was sitting in front of a mirror and he just had one little splash of color on, and another professor was standing there with him, and she teaches costume and makeup. And the look on his face, I said he looked like a 5-year-old who just got candy, something taken away. He was so distraught. And I said, are you all right? And he just kind of nodded. I said, are you having a moment? And he shook his head, yes. And he almost had tears in his eyes. And I said, it's hard, it's really difficult, isn't it? And he said, yeah, I had no idea that I would feel this way. And this is what he had to go through. He said, I did my research. I did the background on that. But for this man to have to do this, to make a living, and it was difficult. He struggled through, and he was supported by his professor to do this makeup. And they took time, and they said, okay, you want to stop, you want to rest, and they finally finished. And he only wore the makeup, in the first scene of every show, but it was very difficult for him to see how someone could then perform through that mask. But we also talked about how it was a protective mask, because he had to perform these roles And so even though people are like, well, we feel protected because we can laugh at you. You look at you, you're up there, so this justifies us laughing, but it's also a shield for him. Is that I can perform this because it's not me. This is me behind a mask that happens to be blackface. But yeah, so that was the conversation that we had today about Burt Williams and the makeup and the humor. And then there was also, forgive me, I can't remember his actual name, the actor who played Pygmy Markham.
Yes, I can't
From the
remember
70s.
Yes.
And who refused to take off blackface.
Yes.
And everybody was very angry and upset with him. They were, why would you continue to do this? But it was protection for him.
Yes, it was a safety net. He
Yeah,
said
he
that.
said, without that, I'm not that character,
Yes.
because this isn't me.
Right.
So he refused to take it off.
Yes. I don't want to keep, they have to go back to the other side of the belt, the highway, so I don't want to keep them too much longer, but are there any other closing comments or thoughts?
I'm not just take over, but when I say this, you opened up about Jimmy Kimmel.
Yes.
You know, I just say, because when I saw it, I didn't see the whole thing because I don't watch Jimmy Kimmel, but it's interesting what the media did because they came for him saying he was talking about Charlie Kirk, whatever, but the joke wasn't about Charlie Kirk. The joke was about that man in 1600. I mean, that's what the joke was about. And everybody, you know, and they skirt all around that joke. You know, even, and he didn't really say what, his job, but the thing is, that joke was not about Charlie Kirk at all. It was about 1600, about the fact that he was talking about his rose garden, whatever he was talking about, and Charlie Kirk had just died, had just been killed. And that's what the joke, it's just interesting, so the thing you can manipulate humor, you know.
Yeah, I would say this, I saw it and I was like, really? That was where I was really? Are you wait a minute. That was my response. It wasn't even a full joke. It was almost like a passing glance, you know, and it's like, what? Anyway, yes, sir.
It's interesting what you brought about the blackface and correlating it to Tyler Perry. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like that was like interesting at that time because the audience that was enjoying that was not black, correct?
Right.
It was
The
blackface. Was it? It was the white audience, right? Yes, but in Tyler.
But black audiences also went because that was the only entertainment they could get. And they understood the inside nod. Look at you making fun of them, making fun of you.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I just wanted to ask that question because I felt like if Tyler Perry if we are enjoying Tyler Perry and it's black people who watch most of Tyler Perry shows, but in this case, I was thinking it was different because it was a white audience and therefore they were not really enjoying the humor, but maybe making fun of black people. But now that you've told me that black people too were watching it and finding it funny, that's interesting.
But historically, with Burt Williams, what he would do, he would go in blackface, and his company did not have to.
Yes.
He even did a movie. He did it in blackface, but everybody else was not in blackface. And also when he performed up in Harlem, he was not in blackface because he was performing for his folks.
Yes.
You know, that was a criteria because if you're going to perform in front of white folks, you're going to have to put that blackface on.
To sort of further comment on what you were saying, yes, the whole thing with blackface was it was white folk making fun of black folk, who in many cases were making fun of them.
The first place.
Yes.
Cakewalk.
The cakewalk, exactly, right, that dance. It was black folk making fun of white folk who were trying to do the dance, and the joke was on them. And that was all of it, even though it was the most virulent form of racism. It is America's gift. It's the musical theater, the form of musical theater evolved from blackface. That's America's entertainment gift to the world, sadly to say. I mean, you know, it's evolved obviously to some degree. Yeah, I forgot where I was going with this, but that's the joke. And so it was vile and virulent, and very racist, and it basically laid the foundation for a lot of the, well, I would say laid the foundation, but it continued this idea of we push the racism out to the rest of the world through that art form. And so much, I think I was in a country, Asia, no, someplace where I would see that they actually, the toothpaste, it was made in Asia, and it was one of the caricatures of an all black face with white teeth and white eyes, and that was selling toothpaste in an Asian country. So anyway, yes. Closing comments or anything else you want to discuss before we close tonight?
I have a question. Both of you talked about how when you're on stage, you're telling your story. Has it ever happened that people laughed at like the wrong parts, and it made you you reflect on where that comedy is coming from because it's something personal to you? And if so, how do you navigate that? Someone being you be like, wait, that part wasn't funny, but okay. Does that happen as you are on stage?
Definitely as a stand-up. Yeah, I mean, you honestly, you just, you react exactly how you just say, oh, I'm not even at the funny part yet. You do that, and typically what happens is you try to hope that the next time you perform it, that other new audience laughs at where the last audience, and then they don't. And so then you have to you're like, yeah, my original joke still stands. So it's often just a fluke, but yeah, you go with it. I mean, honestly, the only sound a comic doesn't want to hear is nothing, right? So we want to hear laughter, so it doesn't really matter where you laugh, just keep laughing. So, yeah.
I would say that it can also. I think also sometimes it depends with the crowd. So as comedians, we are told you have to know your crowd. You have to know who your crowd or your audience is. So you can go to, for example, if you go to all black audience, there are jokes you can't tell because you'd have stepped on the wrong toe. And so you don't tell those jokes. Or if you go to a whole all-white place, there's some jokes you can't tell. But sometimes you have a mixed audience where some people may laugh at something that to you is funny while others don't. And I can give you an example of just life, like back in Kenya, when somebody falls, you don't laugh. But I found it very interesting in America, when people fall, Americans laugh. And I have an issue with that because I'm telling my husband, I'm like, why are you laughing? I mean, it's not funny, but they feel it's funny. And then, so I asked him one day, I said, so if the person hurt himself, you don't feel, he's like, no, we usually laugh. Then after that, we go to them and ask them, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. So you can see, it's also where we come from, the society we come from, the culture that we come from, also determines the jokes that hit and those that won't. And so at sometimes I also do this joke whereby I really talk about just the fact that, when immigrants live in a community with other Americans and they start talking about, oh, whenever they cook whatever fish, it stinks up the whole damn building. And and so I put that in my joke and I'm like, the apartment manager came and said, oh, excuse me, ma'am. And so I go through it, oh, it was the apartment manager. Yes, ma'am, can I help you, ma'am? The whole building has lodged a complaint. They say there's a pungent smell that comes from this apartment. They say it smells like a dead cat. And you say she's laughing. But an African won't laugh. Because they'll be like, oh, that's not fair. You understand? So that's how I'm saying that it also depends on the crowd or the audience.
Okay, so I'm going to close talking about Dick Gregory. Because my research has been about laughing to keep from crying, role of laughter, role of humor, role of comedy. in the lives of African Americans and throughout the African diaspora. And it had many roles, it served many functions. And so I think about Dick Gregory as I continue to finish up the research on this work. He did the mainstream comedy for many years, and then decided that he made he made a very definitive choice to begin speaking to the challenges that were happening in the civil rights movement through his comedy. And he lost a lot of work that way, but he decided that that was his to do. And so escapism, release, resistance, all of those things are important. And today I want to encourage everybody to find the funny, keep laughing. Our ancestors have they created a blueprint for us, right? Throughout the diaspora, I think of Lenny Samuels, Jamaica. Samuels. What was his first name? Last name? Samuels, a real popular Jamaican comedian. Oh my God, he's funny. Lenny Henry in the UK is another one of my favorites. There's a lot of people, so they laid the foundation, and some of them are still with us. Just keep laughing, y'all. Keep laughing. Don't let them win. Keep laughing. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you to my guests and my colleagues. I feel like I have a new family now. Thanks again. We appreciate you coming. If you're not doing nothing tomorrow, please come see the show. Cruise Control, Black Joy in Troubled Waters, an hour 45-minute rock throughout the diaspora on a cruise ship with 4 unlikely students on a Study at Sea program. Thank you. 2 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.
So Doc, happy belated birthday.
Hey, thank you.
I was going to call you, but I don't know what I was doing.
Am I looking over?
Not at all, not at all.
Thank you.
And which one, what year was this?
62.
You completed 62 years. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, I'm on to my 67th year.
Yeah, you're in your 63rd now. There you go. Congratulations.